To ensure that everyone in Pakistan can use ventilated brake discs, they've started melting scrap steel and casting it into shape. They can produce these cost-effective double-layer brake discs with simple machining on a lathe. To further reduce production costs, these small workshops use scrap engine blocks, which are affordable and a great way to repurpose waste materials. First, the craftsmen need to break the scrap iron into medium-sized pieces to make it easier to melt. After weighing each batch, they use a lift to transport the iron to the furnace's loading area, ensuring the load is just right and doesn't strain the lifting capacity. Once the furnace is fully loaded, they must wait about 3 hours for the iron to melt into liquid form. While the iron is heating, the craftsman also creates sand cores from molding sand, which are necessary because the brake discs are ventilated. The sand cores occupy space within the mold, preventing the molten iron from filling the entire mold. After preparing the sand cores, the craftsmen fill a sandbox with mixed sand, which they compact by stomping down to avoid any gaps that might lead to defects. After quickly making the top mold, they used another sandbox to replicate the bottom of the brake disc. This layered design makes it easier to remove the brake disc from the mold later. However, the molds aren't ready for casting yet. Since the high temperature of the molten iron produces gases, every top mold must have vent holes to prevent the mold from cracking during casting. The molds aren't hardened at this stage, so the craftsmen heat them with a torch, solidifying them at high temperatures. Once the molds are fully prepared, the hardened sand cores are placed in the center of the top and bottom molds, leaving space for the molten iron to be poured in. After confirming everything is set, they press the molds tightly with iron blocks to prevent leaks when the molten iron is poured. Meanwhile, the scrap iron has melted into scorching hot molten iron. The craftsmen pour the molten iron into smaller casting buckets, which helps improve efficiency and minimizes waste by avoiding overfilling. When the molten iron levels off at the pouring gate, there's no need to wait for it to cool. They can immediately remove the mold to avoid the sand inside hardening. After the brake discs cool overnight, the sand on the surface is cleaned off, but the casting process leaves the surface rough. To ensure the brake discs don't affect braking performance, the top layer is machined to make it smooth and even. Once the sides and front are machined, the back must also be machined since the brake calipers are carefully dual piston. Although this thinning of the brake disc reduces its thickness, enough material was left during the initial casting. Next, they use a drill press to drill holes into the brake disc, matching the standard bolt pattern, and tap the holes so that the hub can be bolted on. Finally, after enlarging the holes with a more significant drill bit, the brake discs are coated with rust-proof paint to prevent corrosion, with paint applied to all areas except the brake pad contact surface. With their skilled and swift spray painting, the craftsmen proceed with a second machining round. This step removes paint from the contact surface to ensure a perfect finish. Now, the brake discs cast from scrap iron are complete. So, how would you rate the quality of these brake discs made by Pakistani craftsmen?